Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Adumim in Israel. Human perception of things is an absolutely fascinating field of study. We all perceive all kinds of things, each in our own way. We are sure that the way we perceive something is the way that thing is to be perceived. If somebody tells us that they see it completely or even slightly differently from however we see it, we are puzzled and confused and possibly convinced that this other person is simply wrong. In rare cases, we may find ourselves wondering if we are actually seeing something incorrectly. It's all a matter of perception, and perhaps even we can be wrong. Perception is not only a function of the eye. It is also linked to the brain in many ways. First, there is memory. The way we remember something may cloud our perception of how we are seeing it right now. This happens so often that it is almost routine. We expect things to be a certain way based on how we perceived them in the past, and we actually see it that way in the present, even though it is no longer the same. Another is the emotional state we are in at the moment. However we feel about whatever is going on shades our current perception of it. A state of joy may bring one shade, and a state of sadness another. Then there is the influence of others around us. When others are seeing something a certain way, and they somehow convey that this is the way things are, we also tend to get our perceptions swayed in that direction. This has been proven countless times in all kinds of experiments. It is simply a fact of life that we are not in complete control of our own perception. We may be seeing things a very specific way with our eyes, but by the time it gets through all the filters, it may appear to be something else altogether. If this is the way of things with actual physical perception, imagine how convoluted things get when it comes to subtler matters, such as those involving the imagination. There are no rules in that haphazard realm, and almost anything can pass as legit through the mind's eye. These imaginary experiences can be among the most exhilarating of life. They can rise above the normal humdrum laws of normal experience and can lift us up to a place of unrestricted freedom. But no two people are seeing things the same in that world of fantasy. What may be terrible for one person is wonderful for another. When it comes to that murky crossover of the physical and the imaginary, known to some as the spiritual, things get even more unpredictable. While spiritual experiences are common to all people, only some take the time and the effort to actually delve into them to understand them or to develop the skill to make them happen. The reason for this is that they are difficult to sustain and almost impossible to understand with clarity. We are so easily fooled by what may be called a spiritual experience that we are frequently better off dismissing it altogether. But within the spiritual lies the doorway to the mystical and perhaps the divine. Whoever shuts that door out of fear or hesitation denies themselves entry into another reality. This is the gateway to all genuine religious experiences, though again, different people will perceive the experience in different ways. The Bible has many examples of these religious experiences. Some of them may not seem all that spiritual to us today. We expect all matters spiritual to be of a meditative quality and find it hard to believe that they could be any other way. But we are limiting ourselves if we expect to understand the religious experiences of an ancient text like the Bible through the filtered lens of modern perception. This week's parsha is called Ki Tisa. That phrase means when you lift, a biblical expression that introduces, of all things, the taking of a census. We are not going to worry about that entire section of the parsha. We are going to zero in on the main subject, which is the golden calf and its aftermath. This story, with all its classic underlying background issues and all its dramatic implications that came as a result, represents both the low point and the high point of the Israelite journey through the wilderness. While there were other catastrophic failures during that 40-year journey, none of them really matches the golden calf in utter failure at the very core of everything. And while there are plenty of other peaks, the state of spiritual awareness that Moshe reached following this whole event has never been reached again by any human being. It was all a matter of perception. The Israelites thought that Moshe was taking too long, isolated on Mount Sinai for the classic 40 days and 40 nights. They needed something real to look at with their single reliable link to the divine out of range and with no idea when he would return. So they looked to Aaron, his brother, for some assistance. Whether from coercion or desperation or simply as a delay tactic, Aaron somehow got behind this wild project to build a molten idol as a substitute for God. How exactly the Israelites, let alone Aaron, could have sunk this low on the theological scale of things right after the Mount Sinai experience is one of the great mysteries of the whole story. But it happened, and it changed the fate of the Israelites. Moshe was told what happened through some communication with God. He rushed down the mountain and dealt with it swiftly and harshly. He destroyed the idol and chastised everyone for their part in the happenings. There was violence and rebuke and severe punishment, to say nothing of a complete reordering of the relationship between the Israelites and God. Moshe's role from this point on was that of an intermediary. The Israelite connection to God was to be more like watching a movie, while Moshe was to be the director of the movie. Moshe himself was so set apart from everyone that they couldn't even look at him when he experienced one of his frequent interactions with God. He had to put on a kind of veil, for the glow on his face was too much for the uninitiated to see. The Israelites and Aaron survived the golden calf, but at a cost of losing whatever direct connection they had previously had with God. There would always be a means of approaching God, but with the exception of a handful of true prophets, it would all be from the comfortable perceptive screen of the sacrificial offerings and everything else that went on during the rituals. It was only those prophets like Moshe who would be able to really gain a genuine perception of the divine. From this point on, God could only be accessed through the hard work of spiritual refinement or singular experiences. It happens that the verse right before the golden calf incident takes place, and a couple of verses right in the middle, there are brief descriptions of what one of those singular moments could look like. In a verse that seems to come out of nowhere, we read, quote, it's understood as God gave to Moshe, upon finishing speaking with him on Mount Sinai, 2 tablets of testimony, tablets of stone, written with the finger of God. What follows next is the first verse of the golden calf. Then, when things hit a kind of crescendo and Moshe descends from the mountain to confront the mob, we read, quote, Moshe turned and went down from the mountain, and the 2 tablets of testimony were in his hand, tablets written on both sides. From this and from that they were written. The tablets, they were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, inscribed on the tablets. These verses run in parallel to each other. It is not clear what either of them are really saying, or what their purpose is in this story or in the Torah in general. They seem to be stated almost like an editorial comment on nothing in particular, describing the tablets even though this description has no great relevance to the incident at hand. This description is traditionally taken quite literally, meaning that the tablets were written with the finger of God, and that both the tablets and the writing were somehow divinely made. There is no strong reason to suspect something metaphoric is at work, being as this is no more miraculous than many other things in the Bible. But who needs this description, and what does it really mean? The tablets do play a role in the golden calf story. Moshe breaks them upon seeing the huge chasm between what had been experienced only a short time earlier and the state the Israelites were in at the moment. This had to be done. The tablets were meant for that earlier state of things, not for this. They had to be shattered. But what was it that was shattered? It was something that was written in some way with the finger of God, whatever that may mean. Now, Judaism, of course, does not believe that God has fingers. So this means something else. But what? Perhaps it means that in some way the tablets and the writing that was on them could be perceived as having their ultimate origin and cause in nothing less than the creator of the universe. They were the direct product of the power that runs through everything in creation, the source of all existence. They were written by the hand that guides the fate of history, the hand of God. It may not have been a big hand coming out of the sky that inscribed something on these stones. That is a bit too literal for the likes of the Bible. A certain amount of imagination is required to really get a handle on what this means. but we can open our minds up to get some idea of it. The finger of God is that mysterious power that pulses through everything and makes it be. Nothing less than that could have produced these tablets and that writing. When a person is able to grasp that the world, or even a small bit of it, is really and truly the work of God, their perspective on things is completely different from that of somebody who was unable to do this. The first sees things through the lens of the divine. Reality is not simply rocks and dirt with a few sprinkles of emotions and thoughts to make things interesting. It is all that, but with a shade of transcendent purpose covering everything so that it appears to be an extension of divinity itself. A rock is not a rock. A tablet is not a tablet. Writing is not writing. They are all the work of God, the manipulations of God's finger poking here and there in the world. We usually cannot see any of this, but at those singular moments, we may catch a glimpse. Moshe had to sacrifice all this to bring things down a significant notch. Not everyone can handle such clarity. Sometimes it has to be shattered to enable a more mundane perspective on things. Such was the case with the golden calf. But just knowing that such a perspective is possible opens a window for us all to realize that this is the true reality of things, even if it is obscured from us most of the time. The original tablets may have been shattered forever, but their pieces still remain somewhere in the world, and through them we can gain a perspective on what reality can be if we only open our eyes. Shabbat Shalom.